Welcome to the second episode of Spoiled to Perfection, the show that unlocks the magic behind food techniques such as pickling, fermenting, curing, spicing, salting, and curdling, just to name a few. Here we are in front of the iconic Tilted Shed of Tilted Shed Ciderworks, where we'll introduce you to Ellen Cavalli. Ellen is a self-anointed cider evangelist who, along with her husband Scott Heath, produce unique hard ciders. With a production facility in Windsor, and by sourcing organic apples from scarce orchards in what is typically known as wine country, we'll learn how what started as a hobby gone wild is now a thriving Sonoma County operation. Well, Ellen, it's great to be here in front of your Tilted Shed.
Well, thanks for coming to our farm. It's really a pleasure to have you here, Garrett.
Great. Hey, so I understand that you are native to this area, but you've traveled around the country and finally ended back here to make cider. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
That's true. We're a bit of nomadic agrarians, I think. So my husband Scott and I are originally from Alameda, which is the East Bay, but we have both moved to New York City for separate reasons. He to pursue printmaking in his art career, and I was there for publishing. And it was great and so fun, and it was a very creative place to be in your early 20s, but there was something really lacking. So we're trying to think, where do we go next? Because we have a spirit of adventure, and we're a little bit impulsive, and we're walking down the street in East Village, and we saw a guidebook just on the side of the road here, and we picked it up, and it said New Mexico. We're like, we should move there. We went on a little road trip. We went through Santa Fe. We fell in love with it. And in 1 month, we had moved there.
Wow.
So that's how we ended up in New Mexico the first time. And real briefly, we moved around again a few other times. We went back to the East Bay. We went back to New Mexico, just sort of trying to find, where do we belong? We're really trying to find out, how can we bridge agriculture and culture? You know, how can we get back to the land and not drop out of society, and still pursue our art and our publishing, but also learn how to grow food and take care of ourselves and take care of our land. And so we ended up in New Mexico, again, in northern New Mexico. And while there, we were doing a little farming, and there was this old orchard on site. And we're just like, there's only so much applesauce you can make, Garrett.
That's right. That's right.
There really is. And so what do you do when you have a bumper crop of apples? You make cider.
You ferment them.
That's right. And so what we did is, at that time, our son was just an infant. He was about 3 months old. I had him on my hip. I picked up the apples, I threw them in the hopper. Scott ground them up. He pressed the juice, put it in a carboy, and let it go over winter in our barn. But our first effort at cider making was really captivating. There was something going on that really got our attentions. And so very shortly thereafter, we moved back here to Sonoma County because we knew that Sebastopol was a premier apple growing region, and we thought that it could be a premier cider making region at the same time.
So in 2011, that's when Tilted Shed got started and you started making cider professionally, right?
That's right. So what we did is, we were a really small operation at the time. We just had some really just home built equipment. And we contacted a few local growers. And so we brought in some apples to our cidery and started pressing and putting it in the fermentation tanks. And we got to 330 gallons, and Scott wanted to make more. And I'm like, no, like, put on the brakes, man. I've got to be able to sell this stuff. And I figured at 330 gallons, at least we could like drink it all in case of the zombie apocalypse.
Right.
So we put on the brakes. But we were really surprised by how well it was received, and actually we sold out really quickly. It took off, and it's just sort of redoubled our efforts to exploring cider here in Sonoma County. So if you look over here, I brought a few from our farm, which is where you're at. And so there's some cider apples from France or England or Old America. And so these were apple varieties selected through the centuries specifically for cider. And by that I mean hard cider. You don't cook with them, you don't eat them, trust me. But you ferment them, and they transform into something really beautiful, really nuanced, really elegant.
Can you tell me a little bit about the process for making cider?
It's really basic. Our growers ourselves will go out and harvest some apples, or our growers will bring in the bins, load them up to our cidery. We have a bin dumper, and we put in the bins. We take it to our sorting area, and we dump the apples sort of carefully out there onto a nice long sorting table. And then it'll go through this little washing process. And so it's on a recirculating filtration system. And it looks like a car wash for apples. So they go on in this little conveyor belt and they get washed and they go down into a big tub of a secondary rinse. And then things are still pretty old school. We haven't automated everything. So this is where I build up my muscles, and I'll get the milk crates and I'll lift up the apples for the secondary rinse. And then we have a grinder. And what it does is it shreds the apples, skin and flesh and all, but not the seeds, interestingly enough, into a really fine pumice that goes into a bucket below. Then Scott has a modified shop press, so we're still pretty do-it-yourself. Basically, you take some cloth, you dump in some pumice, you fold it up really nice into a little envelope, and that's called a cheese. You put a rack on top, build another one, do so about 8 stacks high. Then we have a 20-ton hydraulic jack that we set up there, run by compressor, and that squeezes the juice. The juice comes out into a bucket, and then we pump that into the fermentation vessels.
So you have a lot of property around here, and you have a lot of trees planted that you grow in your harvest, and you make your cider off of your estate apples. Do you also purchase apples from other growers?
Well, actually, we purchase most of our apples. So
Okay.
our orchard here, there's about 600 trees that we've planted over the past 4 years, and it's really young, and it doesn't yield a lot yet. So we do buy, I would say, 99% of our apples, and there are a lot of growers still here. Now, the apple industry has been hard hit over the past 30 years. We had about 3,000 acres of commercial orchard 30 years ago, and now it's down to about 500.
Yeah.
However, there are people starting to plant more orchards, and the apples that do grow here, a lot of our heirlooms like the Gravenstein, the Jonathan, the Rome, the Newtown Pippin, they're beautiful apples, and they add a lot to cider. And in fact, we should go visit one of our apple orchards. We have a great grower who's been doing about 5 different varieties for us. She's all organic, and I'm actually doing a tasting there tomorrow. You should come along, it'll be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Great. Today we're here in Sebastopol at an orchard where Ellen sources some of her apples for her cider. Right?
Hey, Garrett,
Hey.
welcome.
Yeah. Hey,
So,
look at this.
Yeah, this is Laura's Orchard. We're outside Sebastopol, and this is one of the historic certified organic orchards that we source our apples from. What I just handed you is a Gravenstein,
Great.
and then the other apples you'll see here, some are just dropped, and they're in really great shape. Peak ripeness, those are going to go to our cider. So
Okay.
she's going to harvest those for us, and we'll bring it to our cider and press it really soon.
And Ellen, you had mentioned a cider and food pairing today?
Oh, heck yes. I've
Yeah.
got something special planned for you.
All right.
I've picked some great local producers to showcase some of their great products made from local ingredients, and we're going to pair that with the ciders, and it's going to blow your mind.
Sounds awesome.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Cool. This looks great.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it beautiful? Hey, guys. How are you
Hey.
doing? So glad to see you. I hope you really enjoy what we have prepared for you today. So, I brought a really special cider to start off with, and what's so special about it is a lot of it came from this very orchard. It features 50% organic Gravenstein and a blend of other heirloom and traditional tannic cider apples, and it's called Graviva. And this is the party cider. It's like Viva la Grave. So I thought it would be a great one to get started with. And while I'm starting the pour, Garrett, maybe you can share a little bit from your experience of principles for pairing wine and food and see if they relate to cider and food
Oh,
as
sure, sure. So with wine and food, I mean, sometimes you want complementary flavors, right? So something buttery going with a buttery Chardonnay, for instance. Sometimes you want to highlight contrasts, so you'll pick something with a contrasting flavor profile. And all of that is great, but you know what? I think the most important thing about pairing wine with food is enjoying what you're drinking, enjoying who it's with, and enjoying the food that you're eating along with it all together. So I think that's the most important part of wine and food pairing. How does that relate to cider?
Absolutely the same. I mean, what it is about is pleasure and
Yeah.
sharing it with other people and seeing what they think. And there are some really guiding principles, but for the most part, this is subjective and it's something to be explored rather than instructed. And so what I want to do today is just sort of explore some of my favorite pairings and then see what you all think about it. So what I just poured for you here, again, is Graviva. And this is a really pretty, lightly a sharp, acidic cider with a good earthiness, has some good effervescence, and because of that, it has a lot of versatility. And what I particularly love to do is pair it with some smoked local salmon. So really, you can't beat it. It's a great combination. And something very special that I wanted to bring today are cheeses from the Wyrock Farm and Creamery in Petaluma. So these are friends of ours, and the reason we know them is because they have a flock of about 150 dairy sheep. And what do sheep like to eat? You know it. They love apples. And so what we do is we save all of the pressed apple pumice from, that once it gets squeezed, it's dried out. But the sheep love it. There's some really good sugars in there. And so the Wyrocks come and they bring it back home to their farm. They feed their dairy sheep. And in return, we get some beautiful sheep milk cheeses. So it's a full circle. So what I would love for you to do is just give it a try and see what you think about the interplay of flavors and textures. Sometimes like and like attracts, and sometimes opposites attract as well.
Exactly. Great. All right. Well, cheers.
Cheers.
Okay.
That is going to go dynamite.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Sure.
We have that.
Sure. Here, let's start over there with you. This is pretty cool. The cider is chilled quite a bit. Is this at the right temperature? What's the right temperature?
That's a great question. So, as we know, there are what I consider cider. The same thing with a little bit of residual sugar. Less than 1% residual sugar.
It is so amazing to experience the magical transformation when foods are fermented. Ellen and Scott of Tilted Shed Ciderworks have a great reason to be evangelical about their ciders. They are, in Ellen's words, sublime. I hope you'll join us next time as we continue to experience the magical transformation when foods become spoiled to perfection.
Spoiled to Perfection is brought to you by Bubby's. See us online at bubbys.com. And remember to eat my pickles, wear clean underwear, and marry a doctor.